Now here's one that is abundantly common, and the appeal is such that it takes some very careful thinking to see the issue clearly. Buy American. What could be easier to understand? Surely, it follows that if we all purchase products made in our country, we will increase employment and profits for our own people, who will spend those here then in our country, which will provide further employment and profits for Americans. And we can tell the rest of the world to just take a flying leap because we don't need them, right? Well, slow down for a minute and let's think about it. Now, presumably, the only reason any American would prefer to purchase a foreign-made product or service would be that it is a better quality or lower price, right? So, if America is producing the highest quality, lowest cost goods, there would be no need or reason for this Buy American persuasion campaign. It's part of human nature to want to get the best value for our hard-earned dollars. You don't have to persuade people to do that. Accepting the fact that the economies are a reflection of humans acting in their best judgment and their self-interest, we have to admit that people prefer to get more for less. Now, what the Buy America movement is all about is an attempt to persuade Americans that, contrary to their better judgment and shopping expertise, they will actually be better off spending more money, and in most cases much more, for an American-made product than for the imported product. Now, it should be obvious that when Americans fall prey to this line of persuasion, that there is some American somewhere that indeed benefits from that choice to pay more. But what is not seen is that there's some other American somewhere else that is worse off, because the extra money that is spent on the American product is now no longer available to be spent on some other product. And what has happened is that a less efficient producer has been propped up and encouraged to stay in business when there are more efficient producers overseas that can make the products and ship them across the ocean to us for less than the American producer charges. And that means that American consumers are worse off to the extent that they paid more than necessary for the American product out of some distorted sense of patriotism. And all that has happened is that the inefficient American producers have been made better off at the expense of the supposedly patriotic American consumers, and there is no net gain in the American economy. In fact, there's actually a loss, because the resources that were directed to the inefficient American producers were misused. It should have been directed to alternative uses that would provide other satisfactions to the American people. So the misguided thinking in this idea of a Buy American is easily seen if we simply extend it to, say, buy fill in the blank for your state. Buy Idaho. There is a campaign to buy in Idaho. Or how about, let's get even better than that. Let's buy fill in the blank for the name of your city. Or take it one step further. Buy fill in the blank for the name of your family. It just doesn't make economic sense for you to pay more for things in order to sustain less efficient producers. Now here's an example. I live in Idaho. We make plenty of potatoes, but we're not so good at growing bananas. Should we attempt to support the Idaho economy by persuading Idahoans to buy Idaho bananas? Seems ludicrous. It is an obvious example of something Idaho would be very inefficient at producing. But the principle is exactly the same. It would be a tragic waste of resources for Idaho farmers to build heated greenhouses in order to produce Idaho bananas. It isn't the size of the waste that makes it wrong, it's just the very idea that is wrong. It would be harmful to all of Idaho to foist such a program on Idaho consumers. Now, one thing I can say, however, is that at least the Buy American program is mostly voluntary, and it's not government mandated, but there is a law that defines what an American product is for purposes of enforcing our so-called free trade agreements. It would be a whole other order of magnitude of error to attempt to enforce Buy American by the force of law, which is really what we do when we impose tariffs and trade restrictions. It would unleash an entire host of evils upon our country that, if it were attempted, would just be economically disastrous. This is economic law. It cannot be broken without reaping the consequences.